So this is basically another really bad idea brought to you by Sweet Maria's Coffee. This is roasted in Parchment Coffee, and this coffee here is roasted already, and what we have is a mix of different processes. The parchment that is tan, like this here, is a full wet process style parchment, and the dark coffee here is a pulp natural, where there's been some fruit on the coffee, and in the roast process that fruit has burned somewhat. So what's kind of interesting to know is that all this coffee you're looking at right here is roasted to the same degree of roast. I'll go ahead and attempt to peel one of these here. So let's half peel it, and you can see that's half the bean poking out and the parchment lobes of the coffee, and here is a fully peeled roasted coffee bean. So as you can imagine, it's really difficult to roast coffee this way because you have no idea what's going on. It's really quiet in the roaster, and you can't really hear the cracks or anything. So it's kind of a fun project. What we do is we basically grind this coffee up as you see it with the parchment on it and brew it. And what you get is a fairly mediocre cup of coffee, but what's really interesting, especially for training purposes or just to train your palate, is that this coffee has tons of body because all the cellulose and all the soluble materials that's in the parchment exponentially increases those soluble solids that end up in the cup. And if you do a French press, you get the insoluble solids, the suspended solids as well. So it's kind of a fun experiment. Let me show you really quick what the parchment coffee looks like before it's roasted, and you'll see that it's quite a different look. This is parchment coffee. So when you're doing a wet process on coffee, this is an intermediate step that you're going to see. And here you can see that there are some darker reddish types here. That's a miel coffee. Right next to it here, that's a wet processed, fully wet process style parchment. Inside here, it's a little bit harder to peel, is the green coffee right there. And if you're interested, if you were doing the other type of processing, dry processing, the intermediate stage would be pods. Pods look like this. That's a whole dried coffee cherry simply laid out in the patio. Whereas the wet process, they've actually pulped off the skin and gotten to this intermediate layer that surrounds the green coffee bean. Unfortunately, pods are incredibly tough, and cracking one. Okay, here's a good one that you can see the parchment actually sticking out, but what'll happen is in one step they'll rip out the green bean which is inside there, if you can see that. So two different processes and a kooky way to roast coffee in the parchment. We're selling that at Sweet Maria's for a little while. It's just a kind of novelty lot that we get each year. Maybe this is the last year because, you know, the cup isn't great, but it's very interesting to experience the difference in body. All right, thank you.